Hey everybody, Invisiblekatana here, doing my review for the second My Hero Academia movie, Heroes Rising. There will be spoilers, but of course that will be in the second half of the review. Also, there will be like super tiny spoilers for Season 4. I'm currently caught up, but there's literally only one part that I need to mention, and it's specifically for Shigaraki. Shoot. Yeah, I feel like I said that wrong, but either way, you know who I meant. So, aside from a very specific thing that happens with his character, which I won't even give the full details of that scene, aside from that, there will be no spoilers for the actual season itself. It would be like super vague stuff that's just like, oh, it's like this, but there won't be any spoilers for season 4, and of course, there won't be spoilers for the movie until the second half of this review. In fact, I'll just save the spoilers, the slight spoiler for the show, for the second half of it, so there's no spoilers whatsoever in this first part. That being said, love the movie. Really cool. I actually got to see it in theaters. I took my little cousin to see it like weeks ago, and it was fun. It was a really good movie. The first thing that I want to talk about is, and this is the very first thing I was waiting to see, I wish that they would do like what most anime movies do, which is up the animation quality. That is literally the one thing that kind of bugs me about the My Hero films. The first one, I also saw the first one in theaters, and it was the same thing. I was like, okay, this just looks like the show. And it didn't really bug me that much, but it was something that I noticed, and I don't think I mentioned it in that old review that I did. But I did notice it, like in the theater. I was like, oh, this kind of just looks like an episode of the show. And the prime example of that, and this is something, I guess, like the most minute spoiler in the universe, in the very first episode of season 4, they literally use clips from the first movie to like talk about All Might and stuff. And I was like, those clips are literally from the movie, and it's like, yep, it's the exact same animation. It's not like most anime movies where it's like, here's the show and then here's the movie. Like the movie just looks phenomenal. It just looks like every other episode, except for the action sequences, which is basically, it literally just follows the formula of the show. It looks exactly like the show, and when they have the epic, like the grand finale action sequence, that's when, much like in anime as a whole, they up the animation quality, and it's like, holy crap, that looks phenomenal. So that was the one thing I did notice, and I was hoping, especially because it was the sequel movie, I was like, I really hope that the whole movie just looks better. It's not like the whole thing has to look like, the fight scenes, but it would have been nice if the whole thing just looked better, in general. But instead, it does look exactly like, like if it came on TV, it would literally just be like, boom, it plops right in. You would have no idea if you didn't know that it was the movie. You wouldn't know. It's literally no difference. It looks exactly like the series. So that was like the one thing where I was like, I'm so used to that, bump in animation quality when they do the films, especially with it being the sequel. I thought for sure they were gonna do it, and they kept it the same. And I feel like that must be a stylistic choice because they spend so much time in between seasons, for the show, that it's almost kind of weird that they wouldn't have that, have like the movies planned out even further ahead of time. So it's kind of weird that they end up coming out and it's like, no, they look exactly like the show. Like you feel like there would be something in there where they would, do that for the movies and just be like, all right, just the whole movie's going to look better. But instead, it's exactly like the series. Like it looks normal until like, that special moment where they fight. So aside from that, I loved it. The kids are on an island, which it's just weird. It's just funny. Like every time they have to do something, like that's almost the point of this series. The kids are always in some crazy situation they shouldn't be in, and that was actually kind of the point of the first movie. It was like, oh, we kind of can't use our powers because of this and that, which was weird. But I'm like, it's a life or death situation, and they're like, but we aren't really supposed to use our powers. And I was like, this makes no sense. I get it, but it was like they're in such a crazy situation. I didn't think it was the time to be like, we have to follow the rules. It was super weird to me. But the first movie's great too. But all the kids are on an island. It's like, oh, the island doesn't have that much danger. All the heroes were old and they kind of died out because, there's not much to do. There are never villains on the island or anything. So just toss the whole effing class there. And I was like, all right, that's weird, but that's kind of the point of the show. They always end up in situations that they literally should never have been in the first place. So that's what happens. And it was just like, all right, this is awesome. I saw this movie right after like the overhaul fight. So for me, it was still kind of like, it was like basically the first half of season 4. And I love the movie for the fact that it's class 1A. Because I felt like they, like the class wasn't really like the big thing. Like it was moving into like the kids starting to spread out like just a little bit. And so a lot of the characters aren't really, they don't really get to shine in like the first half of season 4, it's really like 6 of the kids are like a main focus. And for the most part, this, season 4 especially has really been straight up like it's just Midoriya. So it's mostly been focused on him, and some other people kind of get a little bit to shine. But for the most part, at most, it's like 6 or 7 of the kids, and the rest of the class is there a little bit. So I was actually super happy watching the movie. I was like, man, I kind of miss these characters because I caught up late too. So even binging it, I was like flying through everything, and by the time I saw the movie, I was still just like, man, I felt like I hadn't seen anybody. So it felt good to see like the whole class is just a unit for the whole movie. And, like they have, everyone's doing their different jobs, but they're like in groups. And I was like, I love this. I was glad to see like class 1A. So I was happy with that for sure. And the whole class was together and everyone had like a moment to shine in the movie. So love that for sure. And the really interesting thing, having caught up to like the most recent episode, is that this takes place after, I would assume it just straight up takes place after the entire season, because they show some stuff in this, and once again I'll talk about that, but there were like 2 very specific things, and I was like, okay, I just haven't gotten to that part in the series yet. And technically, unless, because I'm watching it on Verve, unless Verve is behind and Funimation on their own site is like 2 or 3 episodes ahead, there's stuff in this movie that still hasn't shown up in the actual series. So I'm curious about that, but I'll talk about that during spoilers. But I enjoyed the movie. Like I said, I was glad to see Class 1A together. The action was great. The one thing I was curious about, mostly because of how season 4 played out, it was weird not seeing the adults. That was the first time I ever felt that way. I was like, we hadn't gotten so much of the class, so I was like, man, it's great to see them. And then all I was thinking was like, I'd like to see more of the adult heroes. But I think it was just because I was so used to them because of how season 4 was kind of written. I was just like, it's weird to not have any of the adults in the film. So it was an interesting balance, because I was like, I kind of want the adults because I'm so used to them, but at the same time, I'm super happy that it's just the class because they're not in like the first half of season 4. So I was really happy with that. Like I said, the action was phenomenal. The villains were good. And I kind of feel like I have to save it for spoilers just to talk about who is and is not in the film as far as, villains go. But the action is amazing. And I'll say this, everyone is going to say the same thing. The ending to this movie, honestly, I've been talking to my friend about it a couple times, and I was just like, I don't understand how they can possibly top the end of this movie, ever. Like, I don't know what the anime, or I don't read the manga currently, I don't know how they could ever do anything that tops the end of this movie. And that's a serious statement. Like, I just don't know. Like, to top what they did at the end of this movie would basically be to do the end of the movie just longer, or multiply it. And I don't know how that would work either. But, and obviously I have to wait for spoilers for that, but the end of this movie is like the craziest thing in the universe. And I was just like, it can't be topped. I just don't see it. But I almost have faith. Like, that's how much I like My Hero. I'm like, I feel like the writing is good enough to where somehow they can manage to top the ending of this movie. Don't know how. Don't think it'll be soon, but maybe. Because the ending is ridiculous. And I feel like that's all I can say without spoilers. So go see the movie. Or, I mean, it's not in theaters anymore, but find a way to see it because it's phenomenal. Check out the first movie too, because I'm sure people missed it. That movie's great. If I had to say, I would probably still choose the first movie. Just overall, I felt the stakes were a bit higher, and I just liked the way it played out in the first movie a little bit more. Both endings are ridiculous. Nothing can beat the ending to this movie, but overall, I'd probably still choose the first movie, just because of how much I enjoyed it personally. But that's it for the non-spoiler segment. Find a way to see this movie. You'll love it. So getting into spoilers, honestly, nothing else matters. The end of this movie is like the coolest freaking thing I've ever seen in my life. I did not expect them to do that, and it's like, to have 2 characters, and that was one of my favorite things about the movie. I actually should have mentioned in the non-spoiler part. This was Deku and Bakugo. This was their movie together, and I love that because that's another thing that doesn't show up too much. I felt like it was in season 1, and it started to kind of fall, like, a bit in season 2. And season 3, they had their big fight scene, especially like their big fight. But for the most part, and especially with season 4, it hadn't been a big focus. So I was super happy to be like, all right, we have our main character and basically our number 2 character. So we have Deku, we have Bakugo. And I was happy that the movie was about the 2 of them. Which is kind of funny because the first movie is called Two Heroes. And I think that should have been this one. Because I'm pretty sure, yeah, if I'm not mistaken, this was Heroes Rising and not Two Heroes. I could be wrong. I forgot. They use the same, like, naming system for the films, which I think is actually a cool idea. But either way, I think this one's Heroes Rising, and I thought it was funny because I'm like, I feel like Two Heroes fits this one better than the first movie. But I was super happy that it was both of them, and the ending to this movie where they both use, it was just insane. I mean, two people with the same ability, and it was just so cool. And they do, where they do like what All Might would do, where he punches so hard he like changes the weather, and so like they punch into the sky, and it like wipes out the storm that's brewing. And it was like, thank goodness they got those crappy CG effects out of there. But admittedly, it was just really sweet. So yeah, punch into the sky. That's insane. And I'm like, all right, how is this about to happen? So they use One for All, and it was so cool. And I was like, all right, I love how this is playing out. They've gone through all these cool battles. Todoroki has one of my favorite parts where he like freezes the monster dude from the inside. One of my favorite moments. Tokiyami going crazy. I knew that was going to happen. I'm like, they're underground. He's going to go crazy. It's going to get too dark or something's going to happen. He's going to go nuts. That was fantastic. Well, the bandage dude got beat up super early, so not much really happened with his character. But it's like they're going through, everyone's trying to fight to survive. This dude has too many powers, and there's like, all we have to do is just get him to use too much of his ability. They get to that point, and then basically he has his own hero moment as a villain where he goes, beyond plus ultra, because I'm like, he was having his headaches. He should have been down for the count, but then he was like, I can't fail. He pulled an anime hero move where it's like, I cannot fail. And then he got like the superpower wings, and his hair started flowing. And so it was like, okay, here we go. Made no sense, but I was like, action, let's go. And then it was just the craziest thing ever. Bakugo gets to use like the craziest blast he'd ever done. He basically shoots a laser beam, like it was all fire, but he made like he made a half pipe, like it was the Olympics, and he just made a beam and just shot right at this guy, hit the dude. So then they cut to Deku, who has like a half pipe to just fly on lightning, which is the sweetest thing ever. I think they did it like, they do it every once in a while where they show like his feet. That's like my favorite thing. I don't know why, but for some reason when he's beyond, plus ultra, and he does that where he's literally just like, kind of floating around on the lightning, and the animation was just like, it was that loose animation, and they're like showing his eyes, and it's just like the intensity. He's almost like a demon a little bit, and I was like, that's cool, because obviously he's a good guy and is like blue and stuff, and it was the sweetest thing ever. And I was just like, he's just like floating on lightning, and just like, it was just insane. And I was like, this makes no sense. The physics is gone. Everything that is logical is irrelevant because this is cool. And they did it perfectly. And it was just great. It was just a fantastic scene. It was just the coolest thing. I wish I could see it again. Like, honestly, I wish I could, like, all I think of is him just like floating on this lightning and about to do this final punch. And that's all I think of in my head. Like, Bakugo does this giant blast, and then Deku comes in with the final hit, and he's like floating on the lightning. He's like lining it up, and he's just going down. It really was just a big half pipe, and it just looked cool. And he's flying through, and then just boom. And I was like, that was the sweetest thing ever. And then they do the super weird cop-out where, of course, Bakugo doesn't remember what happened, and because he passed out beforehand, it wasn't a complete transformation. It was like, okay, all right, that's a real weird way to do that, but all right, whatever. It's an anime movie. They can't have it, it can't be canon, or if it is canon, it can't be, like that dramatic. It happened, but they'll never mention it again. So, it's that sort of thing. But I don't know how they'll ever top it. I don't see how you could possibly top two people doing it. Maybe something has happened in the manga that I'm not familiar with that does somehow top that, but I don't know. I feel like that was the ultimate non-canon moment, period, because it's just like, let's split it. Let's give, Bakugo the power, and then obviously, they even mention it like, if you give me the power, will you still be able to fight? And it was like, well, All Might was able to do it for quite a while after he first transferred the power to me. So at least in this very specific moment, of course I'll still have the power. Like, I'll fight with the embers left, and you fight, with it as well. So like, they already had precedent for two people technically having the power at the same time. And it was just like the coolest thing in the universe. And it was so cool. I wish I might go on YouTube just to watch a crappy version of it, because it really was that good. Like, I was so happy with that. But love the movie as a whole. The two things that happened in this, though, that I thought were very interesting, I just assumed, all right, I haven't caught up to the show. Deku having his new ability, like the new gauntlets and stuff, that was interesting. He still technically doesn't have that in like his full outfit yet. Like he has the gauntlets and the gloves and stuff. Although I felt like in the movie they look different. I don't remember like the gold tips being on there. I could be wrong because it was like a new thing, and I was just like, oh, that's really cool. And it was like he has like, you know, little gauntlets to pressurize like just the finger blast. So I was like, oh, that's cool. That'll be interesting to see how that builds up. And like he just got that in like the last episode of the show, and I was like, that's interesting. So this has to take place after that. And then the second thing is Shigaraki has like the red jacket, and I was like, well, that looks super cool. And that's the other thing that I kind of wish was in this movie, because as soon as I saw the movie, I was like, okay, they're doing the one for all thing, and it was like they're kind of sticking with that, kind of like how the first movie does, but they're transitioning into something a little bit newer. I like that idea, and I was fine. Like the League of Villains aren't really in it, no big deal. I was like, oh, you know, the jacket looks good on him. It definitely worked. And then after that, I watched the episode after the overhaul fight where, you know, a very specific thing happens. I just in case, some very specific stuff happens. But also, he goes like really crazy in this scene where he like kind of freaks out a little bit. And I was like, as soon as I saw that scene, I was like, I wish that was in the movie. That changed like my whole perspective on him only being at the beginning and end. And I was like, I wish he was in the movie a lot more now, because I want a crazier version of him, because he's so calm in that very specific moment, like the first time you see him kind of lose it. And I was like, I wish that was in the movie so bad, but I would just have to wait for it. It hasn't even really been in the show yet, which is crazy. Like that was that one moment, and he kind of hasn't, you know, shown up much since then. So I kind of wish that was there. But yeah, the red jacket thing, I assume is something that's in the manga. And obviously, you know, Deku now has his new ability. So I thought that was really interesting. And I was like, oh, you know, catching up to the show, neither of those things had shown up until like just recently, and even then only one of those things has happened, and the red jacket thing kind of still has to show up later. So I was like, oh, that's like just some manga stuff, and they were like, we're gonna get to it this season, so who cares, just toss it in, and it'll just take place after the movie, or, you know, after this season, I guess, is where the movie takes place. But I loved it. I thought it was great. I don't know. I'm looking forward to what they do next. Who knows what the third movie is going to end up being about or whatever. But I'm looking forward to it. I definitely love the movie. Of course, we'd love to know what you guys thought about it. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. Let me know your favorite parts, your least favorite parts. Will they ever top the ending? Is it possible that they top this ending? Because I just don't know how. I don't know how it could possibly be done. So I would love to know your opinion. Can it be topped? Can it be beaten? If you've seen the first movie, I would also love to know which one you prefer as a whole. Like I said, for me, I still like the first one more. Just all around, I think I just enjoy the first one more than I like this one. That's just my opinion on it, of course. But like I said, in general, want to know what you guys thought about this one. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.